Hello, beautiful people. Today I wanted to do something a little bit different. Um, a few days ago on Instagram, I shared a post about these changes coming that were, I guess, prophesized um, about the changing of the Earth's background frequency, which is due to shift in 2027. So Ra Uru Hu, who created Human Design or downloaded it, he spoke of this background frequency, which moved through, huge global cycles essentially. And in all of our personal charts, we are encoded with this thing called your incarnation cross. And so every human on the planet has an incarnation cross that's assigned to them at birth. And this is said to be like a theme or um, even a background frequency of our life. It's the framework that we're unconsciously living out. And there's themes relating to these crosses, and there's so many different variations of them. There's 192, I think, off the top of my head. And then obviously bringing in the individual's chart just makes it, an infinite amount of possibilities of how to express these codings. But also Earth has one. So back in, I think it was April, I can't remember, May, in 2024, I was invited to speak at the very first Human Design Conference in Australasia. So in the Southern folk, put together by two beautiful reflectors. And the theme was death, rebirth, life, death, rebirth, that kind of vibe. It's a very phoenixy kind of energy straight away. As I've worked a lot with the phoenix, which you'll see soon. And I instantly thought of this cross. I instantly thought of, this global change that was coming. So I chose to speak for 45 minutes or so on this topic. And I created this presentation. So I wanted to share it with you because I feel like, it's something that exists that I did. And instead of keeping it behind closed doors in a, privy few who got to see it and learn about it through my lens, why not put it online and see, if we can, if you're interested, then you get to know, what my thoughts are about it or whatever, and what my research kind of, entails. So this will be recorded and put on YouTube so that you can, if you're a visual learner and you like the visuals, and I'm very visual myself, you might want to choose to watch it on YouTube. If you're not able to watch it on YouTube and you're driving, or prefer it on the podcast because you're an audio learner, it will be just as juicy and informative. So choose your own adventure there. So let's get started. I'm going to get up my slides. Okay. So this conversation is called Rise of the Phoenix, and it's all about the next global cycle. So just a little, I guess, background on me. My name is Sarah Wilder. I'm a 4/6 emotional generator, right angle cross of laws. So if you are a human design person, that might mean something to you. If you're not, doesn't matter. I've also got a little bit of my astrology there. So I'm in gate 60, 56, 50, and 3, which is a mixture of Capricorn, Cancer, Scorpio, and Taurus energy. And I've always had a natural affinity for different traditions and customs that form the foundation of society. So that's what my cross is all about. And the more I have embraced it, the more my life has made more sense, the more I feel more myself, and the more life's just flowing perfectly and being co-created with me. So when I learned about my cross, my personal cross, it was really confusing at first, but the more I've contemplated it and sat with it, the more I understand how it's been playing out. And for me, it's all about, playing this role of maintaining stability in my life, in other people's lives, and promoting things like social harmony maintaining principles in my personal and professional life. So if you know me personally, you'll know that I am very stubborn when it comes to, you know, not working in jobs that I don't align with, or, you know, not supporting things that don't feel like they're in integrity and all that kind of thing. So, you know, oftentimes I feel like I'm not progressing in life because I haven't chosen the very well-trodden path of basically, you know, trading my time for money in kind of jobs that don't really align with my values and ethics and that kind of thing. So yeah, and I've been fairly consistent with that in my life. So that's kind of like that law energy for me. It's like, that's my law and I'm following my law. I'm also really about and very passionate about the preservation of traditions and values that have stood the test of time. So you'll see here some of my imagery, and I'll describe that, is based on, you know, it's very geocentric. So I'm very much about preserving and revering the natural world and its laws, and working in harmony with the natural world, and being a steward of the natural world. So I'm a wildlife carer. I have been a wildlife carer. I don't have anything in care at the moment. But I'm also an animal ecologist student, and I'm really tapped into the natural world and wanting to understand it deeper and understand the relationship between us and the natural world. So there's that element of me that's really about preserving, you know, what's good about this world, and that's definitely the natural world. I co-host some beautiful women's circles with my friend Stella, and we really are tuned into more, I guess, the more druidry path or witchcraft or pagan ancestry that we both have. And so we're preserving that in a culture that's really not very either open or privy, or yeah, there's not a lot of it out there. So it does feel like a bit of a secret club sometimes. But that's what we're really also passionate about, is like, yeah, bringing that into our community and keeping those traditions alive. I have also created different sacred and meaningful divination tools like talismans over the last 10 years, again, which are promoting or focusing on a set of laws or rules, or, you know, a container of energy that then is like a portal of potential. And this is my now blended family, and I'll talk a little bit about them in my my journey with the Phoenix. And, you know, again, trying to maintain stability for these beautiful children, and yeah, kind of break outside of all the norms that we've been taught that maybe don't fully align, and then coming into some form of alignment that works for us. So very kind of unique dynamic that we also have as a family. Okay, so let's start from the very kind of top of this conversation, which is like, what are cycles? So to me, cycles are like organic programs and patterns for life on Earth. So everything is tapped into a cycle. All the planets have different cycles. Everything on this planet goes through cycles, even us, and they provide things like structure in time and space. They provide variety in our human experience. So if you think of the different cycles of life that we go through, we're constantly experiencing something new or deeper. You know, there's not a very stagnant timeline. Everything changes, right? There's always these new facets that get revealed to us because it's very cyclical. Life is very cyclical. And then there's these repeats in these cycles that then help us to see from a higher or different perspective, you know, how a cycle, how, you know, a previous cycle played out, and now we're at this next kind of, yeah, like a parallel place. It feels eerily similar, but maybe we have more wisdom from that previous cycle, that kind of thing. So there's like cycles within cycles. So some of the cycles that we all are constantly exposed to and experiencing are things like sun cycles. So we have birthdays, right? Every 365 days. And sun cycles, you know, it's kind of like the center of our universe. And so everything kind of cycles around it. So obviously that's the Earth cycle around the sun. We've got things like moon cycles. So that's all our like, you know, it's the cycles of creation. So particularly for women, we're very attuned to the moon cycles on 28-day, 29-day cycles, much like our own cycle. We've then got Saturn cycles, which is all about the maturation process. So Saturn goes through these 28 to 30 year cycles. We've got Uranus cycles. So in human design, Ra kind of mentioned that there's this change from being more Saturnian beings, which is the, being kind of middle-aged or even close to the end of your age at 30, to these more stretched out longer lives, because we have embraced more technology and we've got more things that are able to keep us kind of thriving. So now the human life cycle is more attuned to the 84 years, similar to a Uranus cycle. So yeah, there's this interesting perspective that we're moving away from Saturnian cycles or ways of being, more into this Uranus cycle. And then we've got Pluto cycle. So again, further out into the galaxy, we've got generational and evolutionary cycles. So Pluto moves on 248 year cycles. So it's more, it can be generational. So it changes its sign. I think it's every 15 to 20 years or so. And then these bigger full life cycles. So then you'd get to, get these bigger perspectives on similar themes playing out over that period of year, amount of years. And then the precision of the equinoxes, which is kind of tracking Earth's natural tilt or her natural clock. And that moves 1 degree every 72 years. And so she's on a huge cycle of 25,800 years. So quite big to be able for her to go like a full rotation. But every 72 years, this 1 degree kind of shifts. So that kind of ties into this cycle that I'm about to tell you about. So in human design, they've tracked these global consciousness cycles, and it's called the Global Consciousness Program. So it's essentially like, the way that they describe it is, it's like programming for humanity or for the Earth, essentially. And programming doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. It just means that it's there, and we are either here to work with it or use it to help us evolve, or we get fully kind of sucked into it in a more dogmatic way. But, nevertheless, it's there. And so our Earth participates in her own natural cycles, and much like everything that lives on her, she too lives and moves within a larger body of star beings that are also influencing her auric field. So technically the next kind of, when she does this last degree shift, which she's doing now, it actually shifts from this one cross into another cross. So we're currently in one cross that started in, sorry, I just have to reorient myself on that. So yeah, this is tracked all the way back to like BC dates. So you can kind of look at the different, kind of global consciousness programs that have played out since the beginning of time, essentially. And now we're moving into, why can't I see it? Where are you hiding? Oh yeah, it's in white. I can see now. Derp. Okay. So we're moving from the cross of planning, which we will talk a little bit about shortly. And that started in 1615. Okay, so we've been journeying it for quite a few hundred years now. It's on the very last degree of the very last part of that entire cross. So we're really at this pivotal moment in time. And technically the beginning of the new age, or the next cross, it starts in February 2027. So we're not that far away from that now. And then it moves 1 degree and enters gate 55.6. So that's a little bit more technical, but essentially just know that it's changing of the guards, essentially. We're changing from a completely different frequency, one frequency to a totally different frequency. And they're made up of 4 different, very, like almost opposing themes, which we will explore shortly. Okay, so let's look at it. So we've got from 1615 to 2026, we were locked in to a program of the cross of planning and the cross of Maya or Maya. And this is all about what programs our sense of love and our sense of direction. So they're two really major things, you know, and these are hubbed in our G center in human design. So the G center kind of is our orientation in this world. It gives us a sense of individuality, and it breaks us away from, you know, just the collective consciousness and kind of gives us our own unique consciousness. And it is attuned to these 4 different love gates and 4 different direction gates. So this is what kind of shows us, like, you know, our unique perspective and experience of love, and our unique perspective and experience of, you know, direction in life and where to go and what to do when we're here. And so it was tuned into cross of planning and cross of Maya, or Maya. Sorry, I would never know which way to say it. I think there's a goddess Maya, but I think it's Maya. And then in 2026, it kind of shuts down. We're really in the transition period already, which we will talk about. So you would already be feeling this change, particularly those of us that are more creative or more attuned to and more receptive to different energies. So our subtle body is more attuned. You will have been feeling this for quite a few years now already. So when it changes over in 2027, it will be in this next set of crosses until 2438. So in this lifetime, it's unique that you are experiencing this changeover, because not everyone who's walked before us has. You know, our grandparents, their parents have not experienced this all the way back to the 1600s. So we're really in this unique point in our consciousness, in our evolution, our human evolution, where we're actually experiencing this changing of the guards, which means the frequency of the Earth's changing in the background, and we're susceptible to those influences, essentially. So these codes, oh, sorry, I didn't share what they were. So we're moving into the cross of the sleeping phoenix, which is what this talk is about, as well as the cross of penetration. So the cross of sleeping phoenix really is more coded towards our love programming. So that's really what this conversation is going to be more about, versus our direction. There's probably a follow-up video that I could do, or a slideshow that I could do around the direction piece. So if you are interested in that, let me know and I'll make that a priority. But these, they're kind of like controlling forces, and controlling doesn't, again, have to be negative, but it's kind of going to homogenize us naturally. It's going to want to make us kind of all on the same frequency because of its power, right? It can be interpreted as the larger purpose of this age or this era in our life's journey. So it's kind of like Earth's going through her own metamorphosis, and she's shedding an old skin and she's stepping into a new one. So this is, you know, us talking about this big process that she's going through, and we're all affected because we're all on her. We're all living on her. Okay, so these global cycles in relation to our love and our relationships, we're moving from the cross of planning into the cross of the sleeping phoenix. Okay, so it finishes the last cross. The cross of planning is 2026, or sorry, early 2027. And then that kind of like tag teams out with the cross of the sleeping phoenix. And so these kind of affect it's called our magnetic monopole. So again, this is a bit more human design, maybe jargon, but essentially it's kind of like where our sense of self, which I've just talked a little bit about, lies. And so it's almost like an illusion. It's like, this is the illusion that you've chosen. This is the story. This is the movie that you've chosen to like see your life through, the lens that you're here to see your life through. And the frequency of Earth is going to be like these themes, and you're here to kind of figure it out, how you're meant to be within that template. So the cross of planning. So let's talk about the past. Let's talk about where we're currently at now, and that's coming to a big end. So it was more, so it for those playing at home that are human design people, it's a combination of gates 37 and 40, 90 and 9 and 16. So if you have any of those gates, if you have cross of planning, you will know those very well. This is a collection of tribal and collective gates. So when I kind of distilled how I feel that this cross plays out, for me, it's about how we helped to create deals and bargains against humans in order to form successful community support and family relationships, which often resulted in further wealth and status. So you can see really from the 1600s till now, there's really been this big focus on like, attaining land, building out lineages of family, family units, passing things down generation to generation, including wealth and trades and businesses and lands and whatever. This is also where religion started to really thrive. It's where marriage became very important, and it became really focused on tribal needs, and this also contributed to the extension of our life expectancy. So when I was talking before about the more Saturnian ways, like people were dying very young up until this point. And this really helped us to prolong our lives because we now had more tribal and collective support. We weren't just kind of in full survival mode on our own anymore. There was more infrastructure, there was more community, there was more people sharing the load, that kind of thing. And then there was like things like these religious templates that really helped people give a sense of belonging, so that then there was like this family energy kind of, surrounding them. So they felt more, supported, I guess. And that also oversaw the establishment and the fortifying of community success with well-planned structures like the education systems, healthcare, agriculture, different corporations, the Industrial Revolution, and formation of governing bodies and all that kind of thing. So really all those things really took off, and you can see also with quite young countries, like with the colonization of Australia, we only kind of colonized in the early 1900s here, well 1800s here. And so even though there have been people here for centuries, that hundreds of thousands of years even, that only kind of now we've had all these structures kind of be built through humanity, like we just had to do it. We just had to, it was like the coding in the background frequency is like, there's just like, that's what humans chose to do because they were under the influence of this cross. And so then we look at the next one, right? So it's kind of like we can all feel this, the unsustainability of that all those systems, the awful ways, the trauma, all the things that it also caused, where there was lots of light and it's like, oh, cool, our lives have improved in some ways, but we've also destroyed many other lives because of it, so there's always been this trade-off. And we're now at a point where it's gotten to such a kind of the late stage of it that it's now in the crumbling phase, and we're all really feeling that. We're all really feeling like this is not sustainable, this is not ethical, we've done some really fucking horrible things, and now it's time to rectify it and start to build something new, build a new world that's not really centralizing those things anymore. And the individuals are starting to wake up within that. So it's going to take a long time because anything that, any big global change doesn't obviously happen overnight. And we know that because it takes so long to get change to kind of roll out, on a collective level. So over the next maybe 100 years or so, we're really going to see, all of those kind of structures and things go through a huge dark night of the soul themselves and, also evolve in a new way. So cue the cross of the sleeping phoenix. So from 2027 to 2020, oh my God, how do you say that? 2,438, we will be experiencing the themes of these four gates. So 55, 59, 34, and 20. Okay, so if you've got the cross of the sleeping phoenix in your own cross, it also means that you would really be familiar with these energies, and maybe you've had a personal experience play out, carrying this theme throughout your life. But if you have any of those gates, you might also be familiar with these themes as well. So these are more what we call integration gates and knowing gates. And it's more like they're more themed with individual consciousness or individual themes and a little bit of tribal defense. So what that means is it's now moving away from big tribal and collective themes and collaboration, more into individuation, more smaller groups peeling away from that collective and going and doing, starting their own thing. So this cross gives everyone direct sacral energy to the throat. So automatically, once it really sets in, everyone's going to feel more life force moving through them. They might be, more outspoken or have the ability to transform their energy in new ways because they can actually tap into it through the, the earth essentially. So individuals will kind of awaken to their own internal slumber as well. So it's kind of like it's an opportunity to awaken and quite literally like wake yourself up, because it's like it's an individual process. It's not like you have to wait for everyone else to do it. It's like you'll just get the call up and one day you'll just be like, I need to change everything. I need to quit my job. I need to divorce my husband that I don't actually love, or, whatever the story is, right? And so there's this huge kind of internalized thing that has to then come out. And that's really it's really indicative of one of the channels associated with this cross, which is the 3420, which is all about, like, I call it the sacred selfishness channel. So it's really like this kind of selfish, like, no, actually, this doesn't work for me anymore. This is where I'm going. This is what I'm going to do. And it just kind of happens. So this kind of energy may present as a productive and active time in humanity. So people will be feeling more busy. And I don't know if you're already feeling that yourself, but I do. I feel like I'm constantly doing. It's a lot of doing compared to, maybe 10 years ago where there really wasn't a lot of that. It was a lot more chill. So people are going to feel much more active or wanting to, really make the most of their time here on Earth. Individuals will start to put themselves first. Like we will start to put ourselves first, before others. So this is that stereotype of the family unit and doing everything for the family and the good of the family and all that will start to deviate away from that. It'll be like, actually, I'm an individual and this is what I need. The Phoenix can be temperamental emotionally. So there will be this more like unstable emotional kind of energy around. Because it's an adjustment period, it's kind of like, if you think of, a new baby Phoenix kind of waking up, he's like stumbling around, figuring out how to use his wings and make his fire and, live as, the new being that he is. So we're all going through that individually as well. It's like, how do I live in this new place? Like, how do I operate? What do I do differently? What do I keep the same? Who are my people in this new place? What do I do with my time and my energy? So it's a real kind of overhaul of, I guess, like, and reflection point of like who you've been, where you've been, and what do you want to take forward into this next chapter. And that comes with a lot of emotions, right? Because you have to grieve the old ways, to grieve these past structures and traditions and even religious kind of encodings, and decondition and start to let a lot of that go because it no longer suits you and no longer works for you, no longer aligns with you. So it's here to teach us emotional awareness and how to love every moment despite the challenges. So it really is about like loving life for the sake of loving life, even though we know sometimes life is really freaking hard. And it will be hard. This transition will be hard for some. Okay, so where we've been. So since 1960, we've been in a line 1 of the cross of planning. What that means is, if you're a human design person, you'll know that there's lines from 1 to 6. This actually goes in a backward direction. So we're now at the 1. So it started at the 6 and it's down to the 1. And then it will change over into the next cross and it will start at the 6. So essentially we're in a line 1 frequency right now, which really makes a lot of sense actually. Line 1 is the age of information, and we have been in the age of information since 1960. right? Story checks out. The internet was born. We are so connected, like we're bombarded with information all day, every day through the devices and all the things that we've created since then. So over this time, we've had these themes in the age of information. So we had the themes of like the nuclear family or the large family groups. We had this kind of mentality of teamwork makes the dream work. Family as a business, so these family businesses being passed down, and like, people walking in the footsteps of their parents or their ancestors, that kind of thing. Making more tribal bargains and trade-offs with other people. So even the stereotypes with the masculine and the feminine. The feminine stays home, looks after the kids, while the masculine goes and works and brings home the bacon, all that kind of shit. This theme of self-sacrificing for the family. So again, not having a individual voice and only saying, like, speaking for the family, the good of the family, keeping the family secrets for the good of the family, that kind of thing. And then core frameworks instilled tribal and patriarchal values. So religions then brought in these structures and these frameworks that instilled this, these patriarchal values, right? And that was all kind of there, but since the 60s, we're really starting to see this, like the more information that we're exposed to, in this line 1 frequency, the more we're seeing, like, actually, is this good? Do we actually want this? I'm learning more now. And the more I know, the more I see, and the more I learn, the more educated we become, the better, maybe potentially better life choices we're making, or the more informed life choices we can make. So this is some articles, from just before this line 1 frequency kind of kicked in. And we've got headlines like, "We seek husband for maiden. A lady 23 worth $8,500. Bachelor girl age 31 worth $28,000. It's like selling women essentially. We've got this other article here that says, "So the harder a wife works, the cuter she looks." And it's like a Kellogg's ad. And she's like this housewife, 50s housewife. We've got an article that says kids on strike, and it's got all these like not even school-age kids, but they're not at school. They're working in factories, and they're all got signs saying like, "We want to go to school. We want justice." So again, it's like they want the education. They don't want to work. They don't want to do what the family, made them to do. They want to be kids. They want to learn. They want to be better. They want to evolve. And then there's just like these other headlines like "Way to find a husband," "Women and sport," like all these taboo subjects that used to be so, archaic, I guess. "Should women attend university?" and "Wife savings belong to husband," So, and then another one, "Tips to look after your husband," an extract from the 1950 Home Economics book. So this is what everyone was taught. This was the norm. This was the social norms embedded through these patriarchal structures, or these different frameworks that were brought in by the crosser planning. It's like, we've got a plan. Here's the plan. We've got to stick to the plan. And it's very centralizing the tribe and the collective. What works for the tribe? Well, this is the one, because we get rich and we have assets, and, people work for us, essentially, so we can get to the top. Okay, so then come 1960, we're in this line 1 energy. So then since that date, we've seen, oh, my cat is like, yes, I know. I agree. So since 1960, in this line 1 energy, we've seen things like the lower marriage rate, a rising divorce rate, because again, she's becoming more educated. There's more information out there, right? And she's like, oh, this actually, everyone's on the same page. And I thought it was just me, but now I know that, everyone's talking about this thing. There's been a long-term lowering of birth rates and a rising of death rates. So from year 2100, it's projected to overtake, that the death rate will be higher and the birth rate will be lower. That's the prediction. We've had more people questioning social norms and cultural norms and traditions. We've had the lower religious affiliations. We've also seen a rise of atheism and non-denominational spirituality. We've had people identifying more as a black sheep of the family that are choosing to break cycles, setting more boundaries with their people, so they're individuating and doing mass healing from the generational traumas as well. So they're breaking those cycles. They're no longer wanting to be a part of the plan and the tribal plans, and they're now going, actually, that was wrong. I don't align with that. I've been hurt too, and I don't want to live like that anymore. I don't want to repeat this cycle, essentially, because you can kind of feel that it's done. You know, all of us energetically surely can feel that cycle's done. We are not repeating that shit. And then there's also a growing rate of one-person households as well. So, you know, breaking away from the family units, the groupthink, and individuating. So here's some articles from the 60s plus. We've got divorce rate increases after 1970. In recent decades, the trends very much differ between countries. The global decline of fertility rate since 1950. The total fertility rate has declined. The same-sex marriage has become possible in many countries. Single parenting is common, and in many countries, it has increased in recent decades. There's been a decoupling of parenthood and marriage. The share of children born outside of marriage has increased substantially in almost all OECD countries. And women's education, empirical evidence. There's empirical research on the link between women's education and the number of children. So the more educated the woman, the less children she's deciding to have, you know, since the 1960s. Fascinating. Okay, so where are we headed? So from 2027, and already now, to be honest, we're already getting this, we're moving into a line 6. And if you know human design, you'll know that a line 6 represents the role model energy. So we're moving from the desire to gain as much information and learn as much and be that investigator type of archetype, more into like going, you know what, I know enough now. I'm just going to embody this shit and get going. That's kind of the vibe. So we're moving out of like learning all the theory, understanding it, getting our heads around it, investigating as much as possible. And now we're like, you know what, I'm overwhelmed by information. I need to just go and live it, you know, kind of walk the talk essentially. So we're seeing more self-empowerment and the acceptance of the breakdown of the unhealthy family unit. So people are, you know, breaking up their families, but becoming much happier individuals rather than living in those miserable dynamics. We're seeing more diversity amongst people's roles in society. So not every woman has to be a mother. Not every man has to be a breadwinner. You know, we're cutting away those plans that they were kind of drilling into us as tradition. We're decentralizing patriarchal figures and outdated patterns and bargains. We are increasing our fractal line relationships. And what this means is that we are now choosing the right people in our life. We don't have to, just because we're, you know, blood related to people doesn't mean we have to be in relationship with them. So it's like, you know, if you really struggle to be in relationship with your, you know, parental figures or a sibling or anyone in your family, you don't have to be in a relationship with them if they feel like, you know, if it doesn't feel like you guys are ever going to be on the same page. So people are choosing more same page relationships. You know, my individual story is like my friends have really became my family. And at different times, there's been lots of back and forth and healing my, you know, stuff around that. But essentially, like I really deeply value my fractal line relationships, and they're the ones that get to see me for who I am and really deepen a relationship with me. We're seeing more focus on the individual's empowerment and integration of the self. So people are choosing to like, yeah, individuate, right? They're choosing to go, you know what, I've been living this life and now I'm on reflection, it's not really me. Like I'm not actually naturally good at doing that thing, but I was just told I should do it because it makes more money or blah, 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 right? Well, that's what my parents told me to do. So we're seeing this more like individual empowerment, you know, like, no, actually I can choose my own adventure. And then this more self-sufficiency kind of themes are trickling in as well. So yeah, looking after the self more and yeah. Okay, so let's look at some headlines of right now. So we're in this kind of middle ground, and this is what's coming. This is now in the media. You know, we moved from that like kids with, you know, fighting for their education to now seeing these headlines where it's like, why I don't have a child, my climate crisis anxiety. We've got another headline, the rise of the solo female homebuyer. The long distance couple staying connected over video games. More than 30,000 married Aussies cheat every month. Inside the secretive world of Australia's sugar babies. World's richest couple, Jeff and Mackenzie Bezos, to divorce. Alison Baden Clay's parents speak out against domestic violence. What if some kids are better off at home? They rage quit the school system and they're not going back. So you see that big cycle? It's like the kids were fighting for their education and now they don't want to go to school because the system's done. We're evolved past it. We are evolving past it. Obviously, transition period still, right? Bishop leaves Catholic Church to be with erotic fiction writer. That's one of my favorites. And then the rise of lonely single men. Okay, so this is now the template. This is the background frequency. You can see it's already coming through. And these are real life headlines that we're seeing. Okay, so let's pivot now to talking about the symbol of the phoenix. So the phoenix is a symbol of rebirth, transformation, and renewal. It is the eternal nature of life, death, and regeneration. So alchemically, the phoenix represents the process of spiritual purification and transformation, where the old self is consumed in the fires of change to give rise to a new, evolved self. It's a potent symbol of resilience, strength, and capacity for personal and collective renewal. So it's really talking about exactly what we've just been saying, right? It's like we have to move from one background frequency to the next. And by doing that, we have to go through an ego death of some kind, all individually, you know, at different stages of wherever we're at. We will all eventually, you know, either go through it in this lifetime or the next. And unconsciously, I have been working and sharing the story of the Phoenix throughout my work for years. And surprisingly enough, since my Saturn return, which was now 9 years ago. Okay, so I've just given an example here of some pictures of things related to the Phoenix that I've shared over the years. I've got a Phoenix pendant. I've got a Phoenix in my Oracle card deck that I created in 2015. I did a Rise of the Phoenix 3 days of ritual rebirthing program for a few years online. It's just like a free thing at the end of the year. I also did a really popular post back in 2019 about the Phoenix and Phoenix consciousness activation. And that really took off. And in fact, you know, that talisman, the Phoenix talisman, was one of my highest selling, if not the highest selling talisman I've ever made in my whole 10 years. So why do we feel that so much? Why are we attuned to the Phoenix so much? When I learned about the cross of the sleeping Phoenix, I had a huge epiphany and I was like, that's why. Because not only is it one of the crosses in human design, and you know, it's the first time I've ever seen anything talk about Phoenix energy specifically in any of these systems, but also then when I learned about these global consciousness programs and the fact that 2027 was going to be encoded with the cross of the sleeping Phoenix, I was like, holy shit, we're all just seeing it. We're all feeling this coming on. We're in that transitionary, you know, 7 years from 2020 to 2027. That's the 7-year kind of cycle of really feeling that Phoenix energy kind of coming through. So I was personally attacked, if you will, by this cross of the sleeping Phoenix on my Saturn return. So I've got a little picture here of my Saturn return chart for those playing along at home. And this cross was the theme of my Saturn return. So when my Saturn return hit when I was 29 in November 2015, I went through a very significant kind of life initiation or ego death. So the week before this official date hit, I broke up with my childhood sweetheart, my child's dad. It's like, what is he? And we'd been together for almost 12 years. I didn't really see it coming, okay? And so that was my kind of initiation with this energy. It kind of slapped me in the face pretty hard. And so before then, I was in a really typical cross of planning relationship. I did everything to support his career. I really didn't focus very much on myself. I did have my own interests that I made sure that I was kind of doing, because I have a lot of individual channeling in my chart, thankfully. So I was attuned to things that I liked to do and I made sure I did them. But when it came to love and relationships, I was very much sacrificial. And so when this happened, I was initiated by Saturn and this cross, and I had this huge awakening. And it was a big journey, 7-year journey, essentially, of coming home to myself and learning who I actually was and what my values were and the types of people that I really wanted in my life and the types of things that I loved. And, I really completely recalibrated myself. And to some people, I haven't changed a lot, but internally there was this huge alchemical process. I really turned into the caterpillar mush, and it was painful and brutal. Very dark nights of the soul were had for a very long period of time, but also because initially I was fighting it. So the more I embraced it, the faster it kind of happened, and the more I surrendered, the better I felt, because I just had to blindly trust the process. And the more I just trusted that process, the more my life became amazing and, aligned me with all the right people and sent me in the right direction and all that kind of thing. So that's a hot tip. If you're feeling like you're going through an ego death, surrender. Don't fight it. Okay, so for me, the Sleeping Phoenix was and is a relational death and rebirth more than anything. So for me, I learned things like that the spirit is our core currency, and our health is our wealth. Our emotional health should be prioritized. So if you're feeling deeply frustrated and sad and miserable and depressed when you go to your job or when you're going to, in your relationships, something isn't right. There's something that maybe you're potentially resisting looking at. I also learned that it's important to have an intimate connection with your own body and others on your fractal. So relationships still matter, but it's with the right people. Okay. It's not just any relationship now. It's the right relationships, or the ones that feel most right to us. And that doesn't have to make sense to people, out there. It's an individual process. I learned that self-empowered and passionate actions create magic. So when I was acting from self-empowerment and I had deep passion for what I was doing, my life became very magical. I also learned to be present with what is in every moment, and that is the key to living correctly for me. So being present, the Sleeping Phoenix cross has this big theme of being present with what is. So we're not avoiding anymore. We're not numbing out. We're really sitting in the shit and looking at it, doing the shadow work, all the things, all the buzzwords. Okay, so for me, this 2027 prophecy, we're calling it the age of self-empowerment. So it's here to transform our relationship with our personal power, which is in gate 34, the present moment, which is gate 20, our spirituality and our spiritual connections, gate 55, and our intimate connections, gate 59. So this transition that we're in, the 2020 to 2027, according to Rudolf Steiner, humans develop in 7-year cycles, and that's been kind of written in lots of different ways by lots of different people. But this theme of 7-year cycles is really potent in the natural world. Saturn, the planet representing time and growth cycles, also moves in 7-year cycles. So, you know, that's that kind of more Saturnian being thing, definitely still playing out. We're still really attuned to Saturnian influence, but we're also upgrading into this more Uranian way of being. So we're kind of in this transitionary period. There's also the 7 stages of alchemy. The 7 is very kind of, deeply kind of coded number in lots of different ways. So we're currently experiencing more relational overhauls. We're experiencing amplified anticipation for change. We can feel something coming. We're not sure what it is, but something's going to change. And a feeling of being stuck in liminal space between death of the old and the birth of the new. So there's this, you know, with that anticipation is also this like limbo feeling. You know, we're in the kind of like, we can feel it, but we're not seeing it quite yet. So then I kind of integrated this idea of these 7 years from 2020 to 2027. And this is not a linear process by any means. Like everyone goes through these 7 cycles in any year, you know, from now till whenever, till you die. So like take it with a grain of salt that it didn't have to happen in this exact order at this particular time. But it was interesting for me to just reflect on each year and potentially globally what kind of was playing out for each step of awakening. So there's 7 stages of awakening or alchemy, and we can correlate this 7-year transition between these 2 global cross changes. And each human has the potential within them to start this process at any time, as I just shared. So the very first process, the very first step, and something that I am most passionate about and potentially the most supportive on in my readings or in my work is the importance of this number 1, which is the disintegration process. So you can go to all the, you know, spiritual retreats or yoga classes or what, you know, anything that's like trying to break out of the tribal thing and, you know, do something independent for yourself. But if you're then embedding yourself back into those current planning structures, the real change isn't going to occur. What needs to happen is, and like that's periods of where you're planting the seeds too, but there will come a time where you truly have to disintegrate that old life. So it's about breaking down the attachments and dissolving the old and meeting your shadow self. So letting go, massive, you know, period of letting go first. And so we're breaking our attachments to things that we've relied on, that we no longer align with, that we no longer want to take into this next cycle. We are dissolving, you know, different parts of aspects of our life, our you know, relationships, our relating, and we're meeting those like, oh, what's my contribution to those things, and how did I get here, and why do I feel like this? And you're just asking those deeper questions. A lot of the time is just what shadow work is like asking deeper questions until we reveal, you know, things in the light that have been hiding. So disintegration is the very, very first and most important part, I believe, of any kind of transformational awakening or alchemical process that you go through. So making time. I'm a huge advocate for taking like gap years or gap periods in your life to kind of blow everything up in a sustainable way. I don't mean like literally run away from your family, but you know, cut away things that are dragging you and draining you and siphoning your energy. You can start to do it one by one, start very small, question everything that you do over time and start to go, why do I do this? Well, I do it because people expect me to, or I was told I should do this one day by this person, but that person's not even in my life anymore. So like, is it still relevant? And we're starting to ask those deeper questions about all these different aspects of our life, particularly our relationships. And we can just cut, you know, start to dissolve those away and just close off those chapters. And so we're freeing up our energy, because this is very, the cross of the sleeping phoenix is very linked to the sacral. So the sacral is our life force energy. So if our life force is feeling siphoned and kind of enslaved by all these things that really are draining us and making us sick and tired and just over everything, then the way to free it up is by creating space in your life for this disintegration to occur. So that comes with sacrifice. Any awakening, any change, there has to be an element of sacrifice, sacrificing the old to allow the new to come through and reveal itself to us, and trusting, it's a deep process of trust. So once we've done the disintegration, then comes the education. And so now we start to look within more, and we start to gain clarity on all parts of the whole. So this is where things like human design and astrology and all these different divination systems or archetypal based systems are really helpful, because you're able to kind of compartmentalize aspects of yourself and look at them, shine a light on, understand it, and look at them all separately. And again, we're not stopping here. So it's okay to do this at one point of your life, and everyone does, I believe, that goes through an awakening. So we're learning more about this aspect of ourselves and this aspect and this thing and this archetype and this, and that's when we can look at things like charts and that kind of thing, and that's why it's really important part of the journey. So because we're doing that like inner, like self-gnosis work, right? And we're gaining clarity. It's like, oh, that's why I do that. And that's why people have always said I should, blah, 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 or I'm more like this. And this is why this theme kept playing out with this person, and why I keep repeating these patterns and da, 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 da. Or why I always felt I was wrong for acting this way, but actually this is saying that this is my nature and I should embrace it, and then invite people into my life and say, hey, this is who I am. And do you vibe with that or not, kind of thing. So this is really like coming to full acceptance of all these aspects of the self. So once we look at it and we educate ourselves a bit deeper, we then start to reintegrate ourselves. So we've looked at all the moving parts, and now we're bringing them all back in with deeper awareness and education. And we're starting to actually then do the work. Okay, so the doing the work then looks like, okay, I'm bringing all these pieces back in. It's like these pieces of the puzzle coming back in. I've got more awareness, more self-awareness now. And now I have to put it to the test. Okay. So once we bring it all back in, which is when we get back in alignment with who we are, we're then going to be initiated by life. So when we are being initiated, we're being tested. It's like, do you really want this? Do you really want to create the change? Do you really believe that you're worthy of this life that you're inviting in? Will you repeat that old pattern again? So it's really like putting that work to the test. It's like, oh, cool, you know yourself, but are you being yourself? And this helps us build our natural resilience. So the more you get tested in your life, once you've done those pieces, the more capacity you build, your nervous system gets stronger. This is even like where you'll start to feel less empathic, because you're actually more resilient now. You're not taking on everything from everybody else, and you've got boundaries finally, because you're like, no, this is mine, that is yours. Everything feels much clearer. And so that comes with lots of more kind of self-worth and self-empowering kind of actions. And then shit gets quick. So we get stage 5, the quickening, where things are multiplying and amplifying. So all the seeds that we've been planting really start to take off. The garden that we've been planting of the new life that we want to live starts to grow and starts to reveal itself to you. And so that's when you can start to feel your life just moving really quick, or you're instantly getting these manifestations very easily. So I feel like because we're in 2024 coming into 2025, we're kind of in this stage where we're now testing, we're building our resilience, and then things are getting quicker and manifestations are going to become more kind of instantaneous. Is that a word? Things are going to happen fast, essentially, if we've done all that groundwork. And then the final 2, we've got 6, the integration. So this is really when that consciousness that we all know is there, we have this awareness that there is consciousness in the universe, and this is where religions and all that kind of thing also very understand, I guess, and have been talking about for these centuries. But in this lens, it's more about bringing it into the body. It's about uniting matter and spirit to crystallize in this physical form that you have. So you're bringing your light body into the body because it now has safety. It feels like we're in congruence now. There's harmony between what this consciousness has been saying, and now I'm actually living it too, because my energy is freed up from all the things that was draining it. I'm in the right place at the right time now with the right people, and things are starting to click. And then that creates a safety for that consciousness to come into the body and become, your spirit's like, yeah, I'm here now, let's go. And then the seven, the last stage is what I'm calling the awakened phoenix. So this is when we start to live in harmony within and without. So things are reflected, things that we're experiencing within start to be reflected without. And this is the real divine union. So when we think about, the things that we've been conditioned to understand, which is also riddled throughout all the fairy tales and Disney movies and things, back in the day was really about this like literal, meeting your Prince Charming or meeting your match and then living happily ever after. They saw it in they depicted it in a very literal sense, but actually it's metaphysical. It's bringing the light into the physical body. So the consciousness is the masculine into the feminine body, the earth body that you are possessing. And so that's the real divine union, not necessarily finding the right person in the exterior. Doesn't mean you won't. Doesn't mean you won't. But it also doesn't matter if you don't, because you've got it in here first. And that's the real kind of work, I guess, the magic. Okay, so then we do a little pulse check on humanity. Where are we going? We're at 2024, coming into 2025 soon enough. And we're at the midway point in the 7-year cycle. So we've got some interesting stats to look at here. We've got things like Christianity is growing. So it said from 2020 to the midpoint of 2024, the world's population is expected to grow from more than 7.8 billion to 8.1 billion. And the number of Christians worldwide is expected to climb from more than 2.5 billion to 2.6 billion, a 1% growth. Interesting that beforehand it had been declining. So why are they coming back to Christian beliefs now? Some other stats. The 2024 Status of Global Christianity report provides at least 8 positive trends that paint a picture of a healthy, growing global church. More money is being given to Christian causes, and atheism is shrinking. So interesting data there. So it looks like some are rejecting this rapid change and are sticking to what's known. They're wanting to reinstill that crossover planning framework. They're wanting to hold on to it. That's how I'm interpreting it. Or I don't know the nuance of what they mean by Christianity, but I do know some of my beautiful favorite people are more attuned to Christianity in a new age, or not a new age way, in a more ancient way, away from dogmatic, organized religious kind of frameworks. So it could be that they're now seeing it, the value of it, and kind of coming into the more evolved version of it, because they don't want to repeat the cycles of the past. So that they're joining it, but in a new way, in a more modernized, evolved way. Don't know the nuances of this data, but that's what I'm seeing. Some other headlines. A world without men. The women of South Korea's 4B movement aren't fighting the patriarchy. They're leaving it behind entirely. So I heard about this from a friend, and it was like all on TikTok or whatever. This is in March 2023, this article. And yeah, like apparently the women in Korea, or some women in Korea, are just basically just removing men completely from their lives, and they're just all, partnering up with each other, they're living together, they're completely cutting out the opposite sex, or those patriarchal timelines, essentially, as a reaction, or as a pendulum swing from the complete opposite, you know, and how oppressed that we've felt for so long and all that kind of thing. And then there was a headline this year, Blockout 2024, celebrities blocked over silence on Gaza massacres. So now we're really seeing this, like, do these people that I follow or look to online, or just like am curious about, or I listen to, like all these different celebrity people, like celebrities are just kind of a dying breed, surely. But there's this recalibration of like, I don't actually align with this person. Like, yeah, sure, their art is cool or whatever, but like them as a person, I don't align with. They don't have the same values. They don't believe that we're not on the same page. We're not on the same fractal line. So you're just completely getting rid of them, right? So there is this recalibration of our relationships with the collective. So we're disowning or disconnecting from things that we used to think were okay, but now it's like, no, I know more. And you know what is actually not okay, because that's not how we're going to create the change that we want to see, by supporting the silence or the the same old shit that's been happening in the cross of planning ways. So the current themes that we're already having have already had a taste of is things like relationships and family dynamics changing. Love is being experienced in multiple forms and ways, so different forms of ways of experiencing love. There's diversification of personal expression and identity, so lots of different ways of expressing the self versus, you know, maybe more refined or limited archetypal energies back in the day. There's diversification of sexual orientation, expression, and identity. Human reproduction is changing. We are outgrowing many large societal structures and systems, and we are increasing in emotional awareness and intelligence. So to me, this is all good. You know, this is all, well, not necessarily good, but it's different. It's different and it's here to stay. This is what is the background frequency. So now I want to do a little check-in on where we're all at, you know, and this part of the talk is really about asking the deeper questions, or the questions or the themes relating to the G center, which is the love and direction center in human design. So let's see through the lens of like how we're shifting from one state to another through these different gates. They act as like the keys to the lock, you know. It's like all these gates like talking together essentially and unlocking this whole new portal of potential for humanity. Okay, so gate 10 asks, how do we express our own nature moving forward? How do we obey the rules in our society? Like, what does that look like moving forward? So previously, if it's been in shadow, it's been about being hyper-focused on irrelevant small details, missing key ones, and prioritizing profit over life. So that's a huge one that's still playing out. And you know, I'm personally absolutely done with that. But you can see that the shadow is still very much alive and well, but they're you know, hopefully the more we awaken and go through this process, the more that will eventually die out. Versus the light side of it, which is about determination to create stability for humanity. So, you know, there's these different things that have been created over the past 400 years or so of, you know, helping us feel stable in life, feeling supported, and, you know, we've got a roof over our head and we're educated and we've got food always available, and, you know, all these modern kind of things that have extended our life time and have improved our quality of life. And then also, like, you know, there's just these different systems that have helped us to understand who we are as well. So moving forward, you know, moving away from that, we're moving into this cross of the sleeping phoenix energy. The shadow potential moving forward for these themes is self-serving survival and fear-based reactions. So we actually really got a good taste, or a great example of this playing out when COVID was happening, which was the toilet paper thing. Self-serving survival and fear-based reactions. i.e., let's buy every fucking toilet roll in the supermarket. Out of fear, we're not going to be able to wipe our asses. How ridiculous is that, right? It's self-serving. Then they had to put all these restrictions and limits down because people were just serving themselves. So that's the shadow of what's coming too. So moving forward, that's just one tiny example. But again, there might be this like selfishness and this like, well, I need to step on everyone to get what I want. And so it's not always going to be a good thing that this cross of the sleeping phoenix comes if we're on a shadow frequency, right? Because we can still be in a negative timeline of it if we're stuck in our shadow. And the shadows can also be kind of described as a more lower vibration, but yeah, just more of a, just not living to the fullest potential and the highest timeline version of it. Sorry, I don't know what the language is. In light, moving forward for the cross of the sleeping phoenix, we can look at things like there's lots of great problem solving in the now. So people are more oriented towards like being in the moment and being very adaptable and very resilient and very like able to move and go with the times as it presents. So we're living in the present rather than planning too far ahead. We're able to just stay dynamic. There's lots of inner strength that comes with that, and we're trusting these present moments. We're honoring our own authority. We're trusting that in that moment I made the right choice for me at that time, and then that's all I need to know. So that's the potential of what we have access to moving forward. The next gate is gate 46. So 46 asks, what do we consider to be what our bodies are for? What are these vessels for now moving forward? How is love experienced in the body moving forward? So in the past, in shadow, it was for maintaining emotional isolation, and that love is providing for your family. So e.g. your children never feeling seen or heard, e.g. children never feeling seen or heard by their parents. So even though you're providing, back in the day, there was provision, but there wasn't emotional love and nurturing as much. There were very, how many people do you know in the last, our parents' generations and their generations have had really challenging dynamics with a parent, particularly a father, where there was coldness and there was no warmth and love and connection. It was all very much like, doing things right or wrong or getting punished, but also having a roof over their head at least. So it was, keeping emotional distance was, a big theme of the past in shadow. If it was in its high frequency, it was being a part of a strong, loving pillar. Having a strong, loving pillar in your community, or being a strong, loving pillar in your community. Helps if I read it properly. Balancing it with your boundaries and having time and love for yourself. So it's this like, when the elder or the parent or the guardian or the people in your community really made sure that they were filling their own cup, but then they would show up and be really present with being available and being a strong pillar and grounding force and guide and elder and all that kind of thing to their community, their family units and their wider community. So that's, the beautiful side of it. Moving forward, for the cross of sleeping phoenix, there's shadow behaviors that are already playing out, and this can look like things like increased levels of scamming, naively trusting everyone, and trusting that they are honest. So there's potentially a lot of more dishonesty, and this is also the influx of AI and that kind of thing, and the changes that we're seeing in our technology. And now AI is really growing, taking strides, and this is where we're heading, and we're kind of seeing the shadow already, and the potentials of the shadow are just shocking. So that's why a lot of us are scared about. The tool's a great tool, but at the end of the day, it's still a tool. It's a matter of what the person doing with it is what their intention is. So if they're coming from shadow, it's very scary. Versus, if they're coming from light, it's very helpful and beneficial, right? So again, it's up to the individual and how they come at these things, these changes. Yeah, so increased levels of scamming, naively trusting everyone, being dishonest with yourself. So this is also just like, yeah, presenting a, alternative self that isn't authentic. Yeah, and there's lots of body augmentation, there's lots of catfishing, all that kind of, the digital age is really allowed for us. It's really kind of imprinted us a lot. So remember, this is a program. So you're being programmed by these things, and your choices are a reflection of whether you're in shadow or not on these things. So in light, though, it's having intimate relationships with your soul kin, is those on your fractal line, and having transparency and honesty in all your relationships. So even though relationships may still be challenging, at least there's honesty and transparency in them, and that we're attracting people that really allow for that to play out. We're not just playing happy families anymore. We're not just biting our tongue. We're not just pretending. We're not going to change ourselves for the other. We're going to say, hey, this is me. And, this is where I'm at, and I'm working on these things. And there's like a level of self-awareness, and you want that in the other. And honestly, this is all I can truly give you, instead of this, like, yeah, trying to manipulate, So that's the shadow and the light of what's coming. So what do we consider the correct and lovable patterns of behavior? So in the past, in shadow, it was that we must achieve perfection and that there is only one right way to do something. Okay, so it's perfection seeking, having such high, ridiculous standards that you weren't allowed to show your humanity. And if you did have any humanity, my God, you're the worst person in the world. How dare you be human and make mistakes, right? So it's really unrealistic. And that's also, we're quite embedded in religions as well, as like there's this set of criteria you have to live by, and if you by any chance have any inclination outside of that, you're going to hell and you're doing this. And it's also then allows for that shadow to fester and become much more toxic than it ever needed to be if it wasn't embraced on a more minor level, or a more like differentiated level, because we're human. And then in light, it was the correct pattern of behavior was to be educated, was to achieve mastery, and to have high competence and show interest and enthusiasm for life. So, there's been a big focus on like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And, making sure that what you do with your time is going to pay off, and that we're mastering something in this lifetime, or we're good at something, or we're seen as something, or whatever. And so, that's also kind of dying out. It's not that you have to get rid of that. It's just that, like, see it as a program and how it's evolving, and you can maintain that 100%. It just means that not everyone's going to be tapped into the same thing as you, and that's okay too, right? So moving forward, the shadow potential of lovable patterns of behavior is that we must be busy at all times and prioritize what's next and speak from fears in our mind. So I must admit, I do get caught up in this one, so I'm really actively working on it. But yeah, this busyness thing, it's like, how hard is it to catch up with anyone, in your, I don't know, at any stage of life probably now, because you're just so busy. Your calendars are so full. Every minute of every day is allocated towards something, because the world has told us we need to be doing all these things. We need to be perfect, right? We need to come back to this perfection thing. We need to eat perfectly, move perfectly, look perfectly, act perfectly, have do it all. And so you can see the two, they really play together. We're kind of in this crossover right now. And speaking from fears in our minds. So a lot of, the shadow of what's to come is very fear-based as well. And we would have seen that a lot through the last 7 years as well. A lot of fears and a lot of mental health challenges and that kind of thing too, right? Because the fears are like driving it. In light, it is moving forward. It's about mastering the art of contemplation and trusting that what we share and do in the present moment is correct for us. So again, you know, the right or the pattern of behavior that's encoded as the frequency moving forward is about contemplation. It's more about like being in the present moment, for sure, and always doing that little like, what would this mean if I chose this path? Or what does this path give me and my community? Or what is it, you know, it's like just doing those like internal ponderings and just going a little bit deeper when you're faced with these crossroads, and like running it by your values and contemplate, this has just happened. Wonder what that might mean or be related to, or how this is playing out. It's like just having that little bit of, yeah, more awareness, I guess, and then acting accordingly, you know, from that place. So it's still really about being present. You know, when we've got to try and move away from either living in the past or living too far in the future, and coming more into this like every day is a new day, and that's the day I'm living, you know, and only filling your mind with things that are relevant in the now. That's why the Power of Now book was so popular, I believe. Okay, so what does expressing my universal love and faith in God and spirit look like? So as I mentioned, you know, it does relate to our spirituality, and that has obviously changed and is a big topic and very coded and loaded. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see what the comments are to this conversation. But essentially, back in the, you know, in the previous cycle, or the cycle we're just coming to a close in, some of the shadow behaviors was about sacrificing the self for the family despite the true feelings. So that's not necessarily just the family unit itself, but also your, you know, the family community affiliations as well. So clubs and religions and, you know, workplaces and whatever. But because this is more tapped into relationships, it is a big part of what we're here to rebirth, I guess, and what we're being coded to rebirth. So, you know, back in the day, women were sold into marriage and were marrying for security. And now we're seeing this marriage for love thing, which is actually a much newer phenomenon. And that's also changing, you know, moving forward as well. So in light, that question, or what does God, spirit look like? In light, it looked like having strong boundaries and attuned communication skills that respect all in the community and family unit, and making a better world for our children. So it's just like the standing, the strong pillar of the community who, respects all walks of life. And, you know, that's also just beautiful. And so we work together, you know, and so this is why a lot of beautiful things were built in this period, because we worked together for something bigger than ourselves, which is very beautiful, part of, you know, the last chapter. Moving forward, we're now coming into, you know, the question again, what does expressing my universal love and faith in God or spirit look like? So in shadow, moving forward, it could look like a rejection of low vibes entirely and using them to separate the self from humanity, only choosing to see abundance as a material thing. So this is that kind of toxic aspect of the new age of spirituality, is that like if you show any level of humanity or shadow or shitty behaviors or survival mode, let's be real, survival mode behaviors, then you are low vibe, and it's positive vibes only, right? So we're really seeing you know, we're really wanting to reject that mentality because it is a shadow behavior. And we also want to see that abundance doesn't necessarily equal money, you know? So all these manifestation coaches and manifest 10K months and blah, 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 like fucking hate all that stuff, because abundance to me is not a material thing. Sure, it's a byproduct, and sure, it's nice to feel like you've got a lot of material things, but also it's not about that moving forward. You know, the last chapter, the cross of planning, was very much about building on the material plane. You know, it was industry, is capitalism. Now it doesn't have to look like that. We can actually live with far less than what we've been convinced we need. And our detachment from material accumulation and need actually frees us up for more spiritual abundance, more emotional abundance, more relational abundance, more energetic abundance. You know, it gets to spread it out across all the elements rather than just the earth element, which is the material. And then in light, though, it's about seeing God or spirit in all life on earth, seeing spirit in abundance. So very similar to what I was just saying. It's like, you know, to me, I really understand this one. It's about, and I call it the animistic lens. And this is what our First Nations people really knew forever and have taught and passed on in their stories forever and ever and ever, is that everything has a spirit. The land has a spirit. The animals have spirits. The rocks have spirits. You know, everything in the natural world has an energy, has a frequency. And so we're able to actually start to tune into that and see it in everything around us as well as ourselves. And so that's more what God and spirit can potentially look like, rather than it being an outside source that comes from heaven and it's only this and it's only that. And then yours is wrong and mine is right. We're not doing that. Moving forward. Okay, so they're the 4 kind of core questions. So some hot tips. My cat's trying to get out of the room, so I've got to wrap this up. Essentially, how do we navigate what's coming? So here's some little tips from my personal experience: is to empower yourself to be your own authority, is to encourage others to be their own authority as well. So no one has to do it the way that you do it, and you can't project onto others how to do things, because they're going to want to do it their way. And this is how we encourage, you know, individuality. This is how we encourage diversification. And, you know, if anything, having biodiversity inside us also is a reflection of having more biodiversity on the outside. So everything is kind of, you know, related in and out. So the more, when we think about even the environment, we are, you know, we know that the more biodiverse an environment, the more it's thriving. So we also have to see that in our human environment, you know, amongst our species, that the more diverse that we are, and the more we accept the diversity amongst us, the more we will thrive as a community. We need to stop expecting others to take care of us or care about us or save us. So there's like this victimization thing. We need to start letting go of being, or the story, our victim stories, and start to take charge of our own life. And, you know, where possible, of course. And this is, you know, obviously a privilege, because not everybody gets to do that or has opportunity to do that. We need to be able to be a witness to change and accept what's coming. So a lot of humanity will try and hold on. And like I said, like, if death has taught me anything, and it's taught me a lot of things, is that the more you surrender, the better the transition. So the more you fight your own ego death, or your own death of this chapter of your life or whatever, the more you fight it, the harder it's going to be. You will get dragged kicking and screaming. And to reweave the tapestry of your life based on your true self-empowerment, connection, and deep trust in humanity. So we really don't want to like throw total shit on humanity and say we're all doomed and, you know, we're all a write-off and I don't trust anyone, I don't like people, all that kind of thing. As easy it is to do that, you know, I've done it, everyone does it around me. What I've been working on cultivating is a deep trust that this stuff will become available to the right people, and that everyone will choose it. Everyone will be open to doing it because they are ready, because they're feeling it enough. And potentially that's playing out now anyway. So I'm just trusting that everyone's going to take themselves on these own journeys, and those that don't, you know, I'm sending them love, and that's not their path in this lifetime. So moving forward, some more kind of takeaways is to cultivate courage to rise to the occasion in every moment. So always kind of like kicking into your role model self rather than your like victim self or your bitchy self or your shadowy self behavior or unconscious behaviors, and being more like intentional with the way that you rise to your challenges. Is to share your individual gifts with your community. So making sure that you do understand what your true gifts are, doing that inner work to know like who you actually are, and then transmitting that out, because that's going to be a gift to the people around you. To make sure you devolve to evolve. So embrace that disintegration period. Biggest, like I said, I could do a whole talk on that in itself. Remember these steps of awakening and alchemy that we've touched on, and then don't let fear hold you back from what you're passionate about. So, you know, where there's a will, there's a way. If you're passionate enough about something, you will find a way to talk about it, get involved with it. And yeah, it's time to kind of just like break the narrative of like the should do's and actually just be. Should be. Should be. No. Should do, and yeah, who you know you want to be. Okay, so some final words. Regardless of what is coming, we are all born and programmed under the cross of planning. So we are all encoded with it. We can't say that we were completely you know, protected from it, because it is a background frequency. We can't pick and choose that thing, can't turn it on and off. We can obviously get better boundaries. We can come into ourselves and our own individuality, and that then kind of counters that influence more, and you're influencing yourself more than the outside frequency is influencing you. But just know that at every, you know, particularly as children, we were encoded with that cross of planning. So it's going to be a process of letting it go over, you know, a certain amount of time. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. Take it at a pace that makes sense to you, that works for you, that works for your family and your people. But also accepting that we are the current species of humans to witness this changeover. Okay, so it's here. And what and who is coming may be different to us. Our relationships to each other will change. So, you know, there is this big conversation that Ra, who created Human Design, he talked a lot about this new human that was coming. I haven't touched really much on this, and I don't really want to go too deeply into it here. But essentially, you know, the babies being born post 2027 are said to be kind of encoded differently, because they will be born under a different cross, and so they will operate differently. They will have different, everything, right? And they'll come in with much more emotional awareness than we've had. We're really a little bit emotionally stunted and immature this round. But, you know, as they get older, they're getting more and more emotionally adept and aware. And the way that they relate will be very different to how we've been relating. What we know is that relationships shape our entire life experience. So relationships are one of the most core pillars, you know, along with direction. Love is the other, and love and relationships are intertwined. And perhaps the secret to a long, healthy life here is to have the right relationships, you know. And we're really seeing that. It's like, you've really got to pick your people, because they affect you so deeply. Like, they're in your environment, and your environment is important. You think of the natural world, like if you put, I'm going to just pluck an animal out of my head. If you put a koala in an urban environment and there's no eucalyptus trees, it's going to starve and die. It might get hit by a car before that, you know. It's in the wrong environment. It won't thrive there. It'll barely survive. You put it in the ideal environment, it will thrive. It will live a beautiful, long, prosperous life, potentially. So thinking about your environment matters. Like, are you in the right place with the right people? Particularly, are you in the right relationships, or relationships that feel inspiring, that feel like you can be the best version of yourself, that inspire your growth, that are embracing change over time and aren't just wanting you to play a role that is very narrow, which is what the cross of planning was all about. So where's the disjoint joining kind of energy there, and how can we start to evolve from that timeline to a new one, and who can we invite into that, who's here with us essentially. And then my big lesson was, don't ever be too busy that you forget about the people who matter. So that can be an often a theme for me with a Capricorn stellium. And is that, yeah, I can get so busy and work so much that I am neglecting my relationships. So that was a big lesson from my Saturn return as well. So making sure that, there's balance, that we have that work-life balance that everyone talks about these days, and that they're talking about all these, like, working from home more and having more flexibility, and the corporate structures are starting to kind of embrace that a little bit more. And that we will see more and more of that over time, because it's just the only way. It's the only way we're going to survive or /thrive moving forward, because we're coded differently and we're being influenced differently by these background frequencies. All right, thanks for coming to my not TED Talk. So I hope you got some value out of that. Obviously, take what resonates, leave the rest, be your own gatekeeper. You don't have to take all of it on as truth. This is just, through my studies, my interpretation. So if you are not on my fractal, you don't get it. It doesn't align, doesn't matter. You can believe and choose to follow any path that you want, have any opinion that you want. But hopefully some of you got a lot of value out of it and can kind of see, yeah, just a bit more structure to what's playing out, and maybe have a little bit more, insight into how to navigate these things moving forward. So we're not kind of just like winging it and flying blind anymore. All right, thank you so much for watching. Bye for now.